Hello, my friends. I'm running a brand new special live training called How to Stand Out on Social Media in 2023. What you will learn: the 3 most critical changes to the social media landscape in the past year, the pros and cons of Meta Verified for Facebook and Instagram, the best features of each platform to help you stand out on social media, the power of LinkedIn for nonprofits, and how calls for data privacy have affected social media advertising and reach, and what we can do. If you're interested, sign up. It will be given live on April 24th. Go to nonprofitsocialmediatrends.com and register today. Hello, and welcome to Nonprofit Nation. I'm your host, Julia Campbell, and I'm going to sit down with nonprofit industry experts, fundraisers, marketers, and everyone in between to get real and discuss what it takes to build that movement that you've been dreaming of. I created the Nonprofit Nation podcast to share practical wisdom and strategies to help you confidently find your voice, definitively grow your audience, and effectively build your movement. If you're a nonprofit newbie or an experienced professional who's looking to get more visibility, reach more people, and create even more impact, then you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Nonprofit Nation. This is your host, Julia Campbell. This is a topic that is really exciting, really important, and something that I'm hoping actually to get tips about. So the topic today is becoming a nonprofit thought leader. And thought leaders are really the informed opinion leaders, the go-to people in their field, people that turn ideas into reality. And my guest today gives nonprofits new ways to think about and consider thought leadership as a strategy to influence fundraising and organizational impact. So today I have on the podcast Shereese Floyd, and she's an executive coach and marketing consultant who specializes in personal and professional development. Shereese is the founder of Witness My Life, a people and culture firm that partners with corporations and universities to create and implement women's leadership programs. Prior to starting Witness My Life, Shereese spent over 20 years in nonprofit marketing as a director of communications, where she helped organizations increase revenue with story-based marketing. And I think you need to trademark that. Story-based marketing. That sounds like a book. And she did write a book. Her book, Become the Greatest Story Ever Told, Making a Memoir, serves a dual role as a memoir writing tool as well as the basis of a curriculum and study guide. And she's an award-winning speechwriter, TEDx speaker, and TEDx speaker coach. And the other thing that I love about her bio, she's a lover of musicals, like I am, and Wonder Woman, like I am. So we're going to get along really well. Welcome, Shereese.
Thank you so much, Julia. It's so great to be here with you today.
So I told you I was going to ask you this. What is your favorite musical?
Oh gosh, there's only one musical that even matters, and that is My Fair Lady.
Wow. My Fair Lady. I just watched that with my kids the other day, and my daughter is in theater. She's actually currently in The Wizard of Oz. And my son wants to do theater camp this summer. We are just such a theater family. And my favorite musical is probably Rent. But I know it's like a 90s, like a hot 90s take. I love My Fair Lady though. That's amazing. And I love that you love Wonder Woman too. So just such like awesome things to put in your bio. So how did you get started in nonprofit work and the work you're doing today?
I think I have this story that we all have in nonprofit work that we kind of like stumble into it.
That is the theme for sure. Accidental nonprofit people for sure.
Accidental, I am a young woman. I need a job. There's a job available at nonprofit.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right.
You take the job. And so I've spent a lot of time in different areas of nonprofit, but most of my work has been spent in the social services sector of nonprofits. And just, I went in young and innocent, dumb maybe, in the marketing department doing memberships. And the director that was there at the time, Linda Candler was her name, she said, "You have a knack for this." And I never, went to school for marketing. I always wanted to be a journalist, but I never went to school for it.
We are going to be best friends. I went to school for journalism and always wanted to be a journalist.
Okay. Yeah. And so she's like, "You have a knack for this." And she took me under her wing and kind of guided me, teaching me principles of marketing. And the rest is, self-taught and history. And here I am.
Amazing. So tell me about the work that you do today.
Today, most of the work that I do is centered around women's leadership, centered around thought leadership for women. And even in the nonprofit space, most of the people, at least the ones that I run across, are usually women doing this work, a lot of women doing this work. And so I use my thought leadership, my nonprofit world, my marketing, my PR, and just kind of blend it all together to teach women personal and professional development that we can, transferable skills that we can take no matter where we are.
So the focus is on building thought leadership organizations. So for everyone out there, I think we all have different iterations of this term. What's your definition of thought leadership?
I'm a girl who likes to keep things really, really basic. So for me, a thought leader is someone outside of someone who has a subject matter expertise. A thought leader really is someone where their thoughts are like educational, inspirational, motivational. It's really a unique perspective on something that is not necessarily status quo. In fact, it's even better when it's not status quo. It is a very straightforward opinion about a subject matter.
Because what I hear from a lot of nonprofits and also from people that are doing consulting or speaking is, well, this is something that a lot of other people are talking about. And I always say, well, you're not talking about it. Like, what is your lived experience? Like, what can you bring to this? So how do we build thought leadership? Like, how do we even start in this field?
When I work with individuals, we always start with your story. It always starts with, who are you? I like to say it's your experiences, your expertise, and point of view make up who you are. And no other person on the planet can do that. And so when you sit down and think about yourself in that context, we have to start with very great self-awareness. You've got to have self-mastery. You have to have self-governance in the thought leadership space. So it starts with you. What do you think, feel, know in that regard? And then building out what I like to call the perfect world. If I were to put you on a mountaintop and people were gathering under you to hear a message, and if you could create the perfect world based on your experiences, expertise, and point of view, what does that look like? What is the message that you have? And then in that message, people get inspired and people will go out and become donors and board members and volunteers and all of those things. But it starts with you and your message and what inspires them. And when you know what your mountaintop message is or the perfect world that you're trying to create, that is what motivates you to always come with a unique perspective in that vein. And so that is how we usually get started when working with individuals and organizations. Is just doing it for the different people within the organization, but then setting the organization in a broad sense of what are your thoughts? We know what your mission is. We know what it is that you're doing, but what are the themes around that mission, and getting them to look at their mission in a branched style than a straight line.
Yeah, tell me more about the branches. I think that I can see what you're saying.
So one of the organizations that I did this for was a domestic violence and homelessness organization. And that's very clear. You're trying to end domestic violence, you're trying to end homelessness. But when they were talking about it, it's just, that's what you're talking about. And, every 9 seconds, this happens, or 1 in 3 children, or whatever the case is, right? So when we looked at it in terms of how do we branch out from this, it was taking the individual experiences of the people who were actually doing the work. And so we realized that you could be talking about domestic violence in work, like how to identify when your coworker is being abused. Because, even in that organization, there was someone who was experiencing that. You could be to also bringing in domestic violence and grandparents, because there were people in the organization whose daughter had been abused, and then their grandchildren were a part of the system because of what was going on. And so it's looking at it and thinking about it from all angles. You could be talking about domestic violence from underserved populations, men, from the LGBTQ community, from people, who have hearing. I always get caught up because I try to be politically correct in the way that I speak. And then I'm like, I'm going to offend someone.
That's okay. We just do our best. We do our best here. Yes. And we go with it. And yeah, we just do our best.
So yeah, you talk about it in underserved populations. And so when you bring in all of the different elements of what domestic violence can be, then it takes you away from just that straight line, which is it's a women's issue. And this is how you have to think about it. It makes it much more accessible to people who do not think that they have to deal with domestic violence. But if you have a coworker who's dealing with it at work, it does influence your life. And so that's what the branches kind of look like.
So, you're award-winning speechwriter, TEDx speaker, and TEDx speaker coach. And I am an aspiring TEDx speaker, but also I've watched a lot of TED Talks and TEDx Talks. It's all about a unique perspective. That's how so what makes a great TEDx talk? And if a nonprofit, I've seen a lot of nonprofits and executive directors speaking on the TEDx stage, but if they really want to get their idea out there, what's kind of your best advice? How to kind of synthesize their idea?
You have to be able to understand what an idea is, because people hear idea and they don't know what it is.
It's a mission statement.
Yes. They think it's a mission statement or a theme or, a topic. And if it's so broad, an idea is a strongly held belief that you have about making the world better in some way. And so one of the ways that we help people get to what their idea is just give a list of what it is that you enjoy. What are topics that you enjoy talking about? What are things that you enjoy doing? If I were to put you on a stage right now without any information or prep, what are some things that you could talk about for 10 or 15 minutes? And then from there, start saying, okay, so what are the ones that I want to be known for? While I do love a good craft and a good spray paint, that's not really what I want to be on the TEDx stage for. So look at the ones that you want to be known for, because what you want to be known for really does help in terms of when you're building a thought leadership profile. And then take the ones that you want to be known for and say, what is my belief on this? What are some myths around this? What is something that people think they know, but they're really wrong about this? What are ways that this could be better if this thing existed? And then start just breaking those things down until you land on something that you really could flesh out a 10 or 15 minute talk with a story around it and a takeaway for the audience. And the takeaway has to be more than to inspire or motivate them.
So when we are fleshing out this idea, I know you don't really like the word idea, but like this idea, we're fleshing it out. We're thinking what makes it unique. And also, what is the call to action? What is the change that's going to happen? Maybe what is the transformation? So we're thinking about this. I think that's what a lot of nonprofit leaders struggle with. And I know I actually really struggle with this as a content creator. What are some of the best platforms to really amplify this message or to try to figure it out? Like you might want to do a beta test, or you might want to, share it out there and see what happens. What are some of the recommended platforms?
I am a girl who loves audio. I love audio over video, and I don't mean to say that on a podcast, but I really do.
I mean, I also love audio over video.
And so I have been falling in love with the LinkedIn audio feature. And what is really incredible about it is that LinkedIn is really the place where thought leaders can really thrive. And so, in the way that you would do a webinar or do some sort of video training, and even if we have recorded video around, stripping out that audio and doing something on LinkedIn, I can't remember the name of the service. I think it's called OneStream, where you can load the pre recorded audio or the pre recorded video into LinkedIn and run it as an event. So LinkedIn is really like the hub of where I really love for all of this to go down. But if video is really your jam, I think, the tried and true YouTube with YouTube Shorts is really an incredible way to get out there. You want your content to be searchable. And so you want to be able to put it into places like not a Facebook group where no one can find out. But if I Google you, I can find your LinkedIn stuff. I can find your YouTube stuff. You want it to be something that can be searched.
I think that's fantastic. So do you think that LinkedIn as a platform, if I have a personal profile, is a great place to build thought leadership?
Oh, absolutely. I see that daily in the clients that I work with. I recommend it to everyone because what happens is that LinkedIn has kind of moved, at least from my point of view, from this boring online resume style platform to it's a professional platform and people expect for you to have thoughts. Like the longer form content does better than the shorter form content on LinkedIn because we are expecting for people to have thoughts in this professional sense. And so as long as people aren't, I have seen some stuff where you're kind of crossing the line between the Facebook world and the LinkedIn world, but it's definitely a place to build your audience, to talk about your thought leadership from all of the different angles, to be able to use those hashtags. LinkedIn's platform is hashtags work better to me than any of the other hashtags to be able to not only research and see what people are talking about, but to be able to grow your audience when you are using hashtags effectively.
Do you think that things like PR and having a blog work well for thought leadership in this day and age?
I definitely think that PR does. I also think a blog works depending on what that particular niche is. So if we're talking about in the nonprofit space, and all of us who are actually working in nonprofit world right now probably have a blog attached to our websites in some way, I think it can still work in your favor if what is written there is thoughtful. If it's not just a regurgitation of like the Facebook post or, an image and 3 or 4 lines or something like that. But if nonprofits really took the time to kind of think of those themes that we talked about earlier around their mission and write thoughtful posts around those things, I think it could really help because, you have that content that lives there. And again, it's searchable when people Google you. So if you've done your keywords correctly, it's searchable.
Being searchable, I think, is incredibly important. And I always recommend if you want to be known for something, if you want to be searched for and found, using YouTube and using LinkedIn are incredibly impactful. LinkedIn audio, I'm definitely going to check that out. I think that's fantastic. So when nonprofits themselves think about thought leadership, what do they often get wrong? So what are some common pitfalls here that we should avoid?
One of the things that I see them getting wrong all the time is that the executive director is the one to speak. We expect the executive director to be speaking. We expect that person to be out there raising money. And in some cases, depending on how strong of a reputation the nonprofit has or does not have, the executive director will get the side eye. Like, okay, this is what we expect. Just tell us what you want. Skip the other things. But when you build the thought leaders of the organization, the people who are around in the organization. In one organization I worked for, the executive assistant became the thought
Ooh,
leader.
so someone unexpected.
Someone unexpected. This was an organization that did workforce development, and they trained people in Microsoft, and she was Microsoft certified. And so she did the blogs around in the business journal. She did the blogs and the articles in the business journal around why companies should hire people who were Microsoft certified and why Microsoft certifications were important. And so she was in the area that they needed to be coupled with employers. They needed to be partners with employers. So it made sense for her to do it. And so you want to think of people who are unexpected, someone who can really be out there speaking to their expertise, but also leads people back to the organization. And then the other mistake that I see is people, again, using that mission statement as the blanket for all the things.
And the mission statement is often, as I've seen, a statement of how you're doing it and what you're doing and not why.
Yes.
And thought leadership needs to be focused on the why and the unique approach. And it really resonated with me what you said about your take on what are some people doing in the field, but they shouldn't be doing, or what is not being said in the field. What is a gap in the industry, and what is like our unique take and our unique approach. And I think nonprofits are so hesitant to pat themselves on the back or to celebrate their accomplishments or to share their unique approach. And my audience, just to bring it back to development and fundraising, my audience tends to be focused on raising money and raising awareness, usually with very limited budgets and capacity. So how can they use these principles of thought leadership for development and fundraising?
Everything in thought leadership is about influence and credibility and authenticity, those three things, because it is uniquely you. And so when you're talking about development and fundraising, you need all of those three things to be able to get people to trust you, to give you money, to be able to build those relationships that last beyond that one-time donation. And so thought leadership becomes a marketing strategy that is not so much an in-your-face marketing strategy. We know, when there's an ad in front of us, or, when someone sends us a piece of direct mail. But if I have a speaker who's on the stage from a nonprofit who's just talking about what they know, that is also marketing, but we don't really see it as an in-your-face strategy. And so the more that the thought leader for the organization, and when I talk about thought leadership, this means that you have to get away from your internal audience, which is the people who are on your social media, on your newsletter, the people who already know you. This means you have to go into the community and reach people in a different way. This is writing articles for the Business Journal. This is speaking on panels. This is writing even a small book around your nonprofit if it makes sense. And so the thought leadership leads people back. And when they come back, then they know about your mission and all of the great things that you're doing. But it really is one of those kind of strategies that people aren't really paying attention to in the way thinking that you're marketing to them. But every single time that you open your mouth or put pen to paper, it's a marketing strategy.
I couldn't agree more. Nonprofits often think they're entitled to this kind of attention and they have to earn it. And it's sort of like me being out there and saying, oh, I'm just going to put up a website or have a Facebook page or even a podcast. And I'm just entitled to people listening or paying attention. But you really have to prove that you are of value, and providing a resource to the community, to your audience, whoever your audience might be. So that's just so critical. I want to talk to you about your book, Becoming the Greatest Story Ever Told, Making a Memoir. Tell me about your book and how it came about and why you decided to write it.
Well, it's always interesting when people call it a book because I don't really feel that it's that. I call it a storytelling journal. And the reason that I wrote it, it's because it's 280 pages of questions. And people would come to me and ask me to do their memoirs. And then you give them a price, a ghostwrite, and you're like, oh, no, I can't do that. And so, since my platform for a long time has been about people knowing who they are, knowing the power of who they are and their own story, I decided to put the questions that I would normally ask people when I was writing their memoir into a book and then give you thoughts. So if you wanted to be a speaker, it's like, okay, well, this is how you would do that. Or if you wanted to do a course or whatever the case is. But it really was helping people to own themselves. And I often say when people go through it, especially when and again, I work with a lot of women and a lot of imposter syndrome that I see all the time, that women, no matter how credentialed they are, still look for permission to do things. And I would often say around this book, to remember what you are capable of, you have to remind yourself what you have already done. And so in this journal of sorts, it shows you what you have done. And it's a reference for you to always refer back to. So if you're feeling like you can't do something or you're feeling less than, you open it up and remember what you have already done. And remember and remind yourself that you're capable.
So I have gone to your website, Witness My Life. I love the tagline, become the greatest story ever told. Absolutely phenomenal. And you write, women have been managed historically, consistently, oppressively. They've been told what to do, what to think, what they can be, and what it's worth. Oh, just so phenomenal. And you have a monthly masterclass. I'm also going to buy almost every t-shirt on your site. If you go to ShereeseFloyd.com, the Witness My Life shop, See Me Because I Matter, based on a true story, based on a love story, based on an ancestor story, based on a coming out story, based on an immigrant story. These are fantastic shirts. And then also the Making a Memoir book is available there. Tell me how Witness My Life came about.
It came about from that TEDx that I did. It's all so interconnected. You guys learn. This is what thought leadership does. But I did a TEDx talk probably almost 3 years ago. At the time, I was living in Virginia. I am in Charlotte, North Carolina now. At the time, I was the only African-American woman that lived in a cul-de-sac. And I had a neighbor across the street who came up to me one day when I came home from work and told me that he was going to put a Confederate flag outside of his house.
Wow, he sounds amazing. Sounds like a really great person.
Yes. And so the TEDx was called The Secret to Healing the World. And it's talking about this story, talking about how we used our differences to be able to live in peace. And in the TEDx, I said something like, the most sincere thing that we ask of each other as human beings is, will you be a witness to my life? In my heart of hearts, I truly believe that when we witness the lives of others, we really do break down all of those barriers, and that the secret to truly healing our nation is telling our stories. And so from that TEDx, everything that I did changed over into that, because that was truly the direction I felt like my life was supposed to go in. So that's my mountaintop idea, that I believe our stories truly heal the world.
What did you say to him?
At that time, I said nothing. And I didn't say anything to him for a while. I was kind of shocked by it. It was just like, oh, okay, well, that's your property, whatever. We talked about it when he came to me maybe a couple weeks later and offered me some eggs from his hens that he had. And then it opened up the dialogue around a lot of things, around, politics and Confederacy and slavery and all of these things. And I realized in having this dialogue with him, we were never going to agree on any of these points. But what we could agree on was that we cared about our neighborhood. We believed that people had the right to be, and that we respected each other's difference of opinion. And that is where we had to leave it. And he was, actually, he was a great neighbor. He knew everyone's gossip. He knew everyone's business. So it was kind of fun in that regard. But it had to start with me respecting that he can think however he wants to think, and I can think however I want to think. And we truly don't have to understand each other. Our goal is to be respectful and to live in peace. And that's what we did.
That brings me to another question that I had is when you put yourself out there with thought leadership and you have an idea that is provocative and you're asking people for feedback because you're putting yourself out there as a public figure, as, whether it's a book or a TEDx talk or even a blog post or even a social media post, how do you deal with the feedback and those differing opinions and possibly the negativity that can come from it?
Okay, when I figure that part out, I will let you know.
Yes, me too, as well.
Because I could give you this, really, you just don't worry about it. You got to know who you are. And it doesn't matter. But some of that stuff that gets through, it hurts. And I think for me, I needed to put someone in between me and the comments. And a lot of times, to be completely transparent, when I put something out into the world, I don't even go back and read the comments. I really don't care what you think of it. I may listen, and I think I've come to a point in my life that once I owned who I am, if you cheer for me, that's great. If you don't cheer for me, that's great too. But neither one of those positions have anything to do. But it's really difficult, it's hurtful. But that is a side effect, I guess you would call it, that once you start going out into the world and being provocative, you can expect that someone's not going to agree. And that's really okay as long as you are authentic and it's your platform and you can stand on whatever it is that you feel. Yeah, a lot of people do it. A lot of people do it.
That resonates with me on a personal level because that one email, that you receive about something that you put out there versus the 20 emails that were positive, but the one negative email, the one negative comment, also the, things that are hurtful, explicitly hurtful and personal are really hard to read. But I know it's just, you can't stop saying what matters. And I'm so glad that you're not.
We all have to be happy with ourselves, whatever we're doing, the life that we're living, whatever legacy that we are creating for ourselves, and no one else can live our lives but us. And when you really truly believe in something or you have that mountaintop idea, you will use your life to create that world. And in creation of that world comes hurdles. And what you truly believe and what you truly feel is what motivates you to keep going.
Shereese, where can people find out more about you and how to work with you?
I'm 90% of the time on LinkedIn, so please feel free to connect with me there. I am under Shereese Floyd, and you can go to my website, shereesefloyd.com, and my email address is on my LinkedIn profile if you would like to work with me, so feel free to reach out.
Great. I will put all the links in the show notes. I will post the TEDx talk and the websites, all of the links. And Shereese, thank you so much for being so open and vulnerable and authentic with my audience today.
Thank you so much, Julia. It was great.
Well, hey there. I wanted to say thank you for tuning into my show and for listening all the way to the end. If you really enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app, and you'll get new episodes downloaded as soon as they come out. I would love if you left me a rating or a review because this tells other people that my podcast is worth listening to. And then me and my guests can reach even more earbuds and create even more impact. So that's pretty much it. I'll be back soon with a brand new episode. But until then, you can find me on Instagram at Julia Campbell 77. Keep changing the world, you nonprofit unicorn.